Colonel Munro looked around, but in the confusion of the massacre he could not hear clearly or see who was calling. He turned away again and went to help his soldiers in the battle. David turned to Alice and Cora, saying, "Ladies, the devil himself is at work here. Run, quickly!" "Go, save yourself. There is no hope for us now," said Cora. David answered, "Perhaps music will help to save us," and he began to sing. The Iroquois thought that David was mad. It was against their beliefs to hurt a madman, so they did not go near him. The massacre continued around David and the sisters. Then Magua approached them and grabbed Cora with his hands covered in blood. "Come, my home is better than this place," he said. "Never," cried Cora. "You caused this slaughter. Whatever you do to me, I will never be your wife." Magua laughed and took Alice instead. She screamed as he pulled her through the forest. Cora ran after them. They came to several of Magua's men who were holding horses. Magua threw Alice across his horse and told Cora to ride the horse next to it. Afraid for her sister's safety, Cora got onto the other horse, and Magua and his men led the two horses away up a hill. David Gamut followed them, singing hymns very loudly. As they reached the top of the hill, David looked down in horror at the scene below. The murder of settlers and soldiers continued, while the French troops stood and did nothing to stop it. Chapter 9. On Magua's Trail. By a miraculous chance and great strength and skill, Hawkeye, Uncas, Chingachgook, Colonel Munro, and Duncan Hayward all survived the massacre in which most of the 3,000 troops and settlers were killed. 3 days later, the 5 men returned to Fort William Henry to look for some sign of the colonel's 2 daughters. General Montcalm had destroyed the fort. It was now a ruin. The men walked among the dead looking for signs of Cora and Alice. Finally, on a tree at the edge of the forest, Uncas discovered a piece of Cora's green dress. He held it close to him and said, "This is hers. They have gone into the forest." "Perhaps she was able to hide there," said Duncan. "Let's look for her trail." A short distance from the first piece of cloth, Uncas found another piece of the same dress. "Let's follow her trail for the love of God!" cried Colonel Munro. "Look here," said Hawkeye, pointing to the print of an Indian's shoe. "She is a prisoner. Uncas, what can you learn from the print?" Uncas examined the footprint. "It is Magua's shoe," he said angrily. "We must save Cora from him." "But where is Alice?" asked Colonel Munro. "There is no sign of her. But look, here is the mark of David Gamut's shoe. Perhaps Alice is with him," said Hawkeye to the anxious father. They followed the trail a short distance, and then Uncas found David's silver flute on the ground. "We must follow them quickly," said Colonel Munro again. "Wait," said Hawkeye. "We have a long journey in front of us. Let's camp tonight in the ruins of the fort. Tomorrow we will begin the expedition rested and with clear minds." That night, the 5 men camped in the ruins of Fort William Henry. Colonel Munro became more sad and silent as he sat in the ruins of the fort that he had tried to defend. He did not know whether his daughters were alive or dead. Uncas and Duncan were also thinking about the women they loved. The 5 men started before dawn the next day, following Magua's trail. They traveled north in canoes over Lake George. As they passed one of the islands in the lake, an Indian canoe came out of the trees along the lake and chased them. Soon the canoes came to some rocks. Here the skill of Hawkeye and the Mohicans carried them through safely, while the canoe of their pursuers hit a submerged rock, throwing the Indians into the water. After this incident, the 5 men carefully avoided the other islands. Finally, they came to the northern edge of the lake. Here, they hid their canoes in the forest and began to look for the trail of Magua and his prisoners again. Uncas quickly found Magua's footprints, and the small group continued on the trail. After several days, they came to the edge of another lake. As they watched, a strangely dressed man appeared very close to where they were hidden. He seemed to be talking to some people in the lake. "That's not an Iroquois, a Huron, or an Indian from any other tribe I know," whispered Hawkeye to Duncan. "Can you see if he has a rifle or a bow?" "He doesn't seem to have any weapons," answered Duncan. "We have nothing to fear from him, but what about those other people in the water?" Hawkeye laughed. "Those people in the water are beavers. Come with me, and let's try to take this man prisoner without using our rifles." As Duncan and Hawkeye moved nearer, the man stood up slowly. The beavers hit the water with their tails in a warning signal, and they all disappeared under the surface of the lake. "Well, friend," called Hawkeye, recognizing the man, "are you trying to teach the beavers to sing?" The man turned around. It was their companion, David Gamut. "How did you find us?" asked the astonished David. "We have been following your trail for almost a week," explained Hawkeye. "What has happened to the young ladies?" asked Duncan impatiently. "Cora is in a village on the other side of that black rock over there, and Alice is a prisoner of the Huron tribe in a village near here," said David. "Why are you free?" asked Duncan. "My singing makes the Indians think that I am mad. It is against their beliefs to hurt a madman," explained David. "The tribe which is holding Cora," Hawkeye began. "What symbols are on their totem poles?" "I saw the shape of a tortoise painted on many things," David answered. "That may be good," explained Hawkeye. "The tortoise is also the symbol for Chingachgook's tribe. David, come and give your news about Cora and Alice to their father. Later you can return to the villages and tell the sisters that we are here and are planning to rescue them." "I will go with him," said Duncan. "Paint me so that nobody can recognize me. I will say I am a healer and that I am traveling around from tribe to tribe." Chingachgook painted Duncan and helped him dress like a French healer. David told Colonel Monroe about his daughters, and then he and Duncan returned to the Huron village. David took Duncan to the chief of the village and introduced him. "Why do you wear the clothes of a white man and the paint of my people?" asked the chief. "I wear the paint to show honor to your Indian tribe," explained Duncan. The chief was satisfied with this answer and gave Duncan permission to stay in the village. As Duncan finished speaking to the chief, a terrible noise from the edge of the village brought the entire tribe running out of their homes. The cry signaled the return of a war party. They were carrying enemy scalps, and they had a prisoner. Duncan was shocked to see that the prisoner was Uncas. Several Hurons were holding Uncas, but he fought against them and broke free. He jumped over the heads of some children and almost escaped into the forest. But at the last moment, he was stopped by a Huron warrior. Uncas turned and ran toward a short, painted post in front of the biggest building in the village. According to Indian custom, this post protected him, and he stood there while the Hurons surrounded him. "Coward! You do not know how to fight!" an old woman shouted. But Uncas showed no emotion and did not react to her insults. Duncan watched as the chief of the village went to Uncas. "Two of my warriors are chasing your companions," the chief said. "When they return, our wise men will decide if you live or die." "Your young men will not return," said Uncas. "I am sure that my friends have killed them." Then Uncas pointed to a young warrior. "You managed to capture me because that warrior ran away, and I was trapped when I followed him," Uncas said. "Young warrior," said the chief, "it is a great dishonor to run away from an enemy. You are fierce before the battle, but you are afraid to fight your enemies in the battle itself. You have brought humiliation to our tribe, and you must die." As he finished speaking, the chief stabbed the young man in the heart. The young warrior's father stood ashamed with his head down. In the confusion that followed, Uncas recognized Duncan and whispered to him, "Escape from here and don't try to help me." While all the Indians were occupied with Uncas, Duncan started to look for Alice. He did not find her, so he returned to the building with the post in time to see Magua enter and take his place at the meeting of wise men. When Magua saw that the captive was Uncas, he tried to persuade the other men that Uncas had to die. "This warrior killed many of our young men," said Magua. "They will not return to their homes and their families. Their wives cry and their children are hungry. Why should he live?" The other men agreed with Magua's argument. Uncas would be executed the next morning. Chapter 10. The Rescue. One of the leaders had heard about Duncan's arrival in the village. He asked Duncan to heal his son's wife, who was very ill. Duncan agreed and followed the leader to the edge of the village. Suddenly, a big black figure blocked their path. It was a bear, but the Huron was not frightened of it. It was obviously not dangerous. The bear followed Duncan and the Huron into a cave where the sick woman was lying. It was clear to Duncan that she was very ill, and that he would be unable to help her. To Duncan's surprise, David Gamut was with the people in the cave. David whispered to Duncan, "Alice is here. She is waiting for you." The Huron chief turned to Duncan and said, "Now, my friend, show your healing power." Duncan asked the Indians to leave because he needed to perform his healing magic alone. David went out with the women, but the bear did not go. When the others had gone, the bear stood and began to tremble. A human figure emerged from the bearskin. It was Hawkeye. Duncan exclaimed, "Hawkeye, what is the meaning of this?" "I saw Uncas taken prisoner and followed him here," Hawkeye replied. "On the edge of the village I met a magician who used this bearskin as part of his magic. I gave him whiskey for his bearskin. I have been using it to move around the camp." "Good," said Duncan. "Now I must go to Alice. She is also in this cave." "And I will look for an exit," said Hawkeye. Duncan soon found Alice, who fell into his arms with a cry. "Dear Alice, we are all working to rescue you," said Duncan. "Your father and Chingachgook are by the river, and Hawkeye is here with me now." Suddenly, Duncan felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Magua standing behind him. "You palefaces think you are clever, but I am more clever than you," Magua laughed. As Magua finished speaking, Hawkeye came up behind him. Hawkeye held Magua as Duncan tied him up and put cloth in his mouth so that he could not call for help. Then Hawkeye and Duncan dressed Alice in Indian clothes. After that, they covered her with a blanket. Hawkeye put on the bearskin again, and the two men carried Alice out of the cave as if she were the sick woman. Outside, Duncan said to the woman's family, "She is a little better, but I am taking her into the forest to finish the healing and to make her stronger with the help of the forest spirits." The family understood that obtaining the help of the spirits and healing the sick was very important, and they let Duncan and Hawkeye carry Alice into the forest. As soon as they were away from the camp, Hawkeye told Duncan and Alice how to get to the village where Cora was a prisoner. The village belonged to the Delaware tribe, who were friends of the Mohicans. Then Hawkeye returned to the Huron village alone to try to rescue Uncas. Hawkeye soon found David. David was shocked when he realized that the bear was Hawkeye. Together they went to the building where Uncas was. "Do you want to see your enemy ask for mercy?" David asked the guards. "This magician will take away his courage. You must leave, because if you are here, you will also lose your courage." The guards, who did not want to lose their courage, moved away from the building. Then Hawkeye and David went quickly to Uncas and cut the ropes on his hands. They put David in Uncas's place because they knew that the Hurons would not hurt him when they found him. Then Uncas dressed in the bearskin, and Hawkeye put on David's clothes. Outside they passed the guards. Then they went through the village and into the forest. There they took off their disguises and then went to the village of the Delaware tribe, where Cora, Alice, and Duncan were waiting for them. Soon the guards in the Huron village entered the building and discovered Uncas's escape. They searched the camp and found Magua tied up in the cave. Magua convinced the Hurons to go with him to the Delaware village to find his prisoners. The next day, Magua and his men went to the Delaware village. Several members of the tribe came out to meet them. "Why do the Delaware help my enemy, Hawkeye, and his friends? They are my prisoners," Magua began. The Delaware had not realized that the strangers were Magua's prisoners. Immediately they brought Cora, Alice, Duncan, and Hawkeye before the wise men of the village. The entire tribe came to see what would happen. Eventually, a very old man with long white hair arrived. This was Tamenund, the leader of the tribe. The 4 prisoners stood in front of the ancient chief. "Which of you is Hawkeye?" Tamenund asked. Magua pointed to his enemy and started to speak. He insulted Hawkeye and again asked for his prisoners. Then, Magua said that he wanted Cora to be his wife. When he finished talking, he looked around triumphantly. Cora ran forward and spoke to Tamenund. "Sir, please do not blame us because our ancestors took your land. There is another man here who is one of your own people." Cora pointed to Uncas and continued, "He can speak for us. Please listen." Uncas was brought to stand before Tamenund. Magua immediately stood up and shouted, "Murderer!" When Uncas heard this, he tried to attack Magua. Immediately 20 warriors raised their weapons against Uncas, and one man grabbed him and tore off his shirt. But when the warriors saw the tattoo of a tortoise on Uncas's chest, he stopped. The warriors realized that Uncas was related to their tribe. "Who are you?" Tamenund demanded. "I am Uncas, the son of Chingachgook," answered Uncas. "Yes, I see in you the Uncas that I knew in my youth," said the old man. "He was the eldest son of Lenape, the wisest chief of the Mohicans." With these words from Tamenund, the people became silent. "4 generations have lived and died since you knew the Uncas of your youth," said Uncas. "My father and I are the last of the Mohicans." "You are welcome here," said Tamenund. "But what about these other prisoners? Do you know them?" "Yes, I know them," said Uncas. "You must not believe Magua's words. Hawkeye is a friend to me. All these prisoners are my friends, and I ask you to release them." Tamenund thought for a moment, then said, "I will allow the prisoners to be released. All except this woman." Tamenund pointed to Cora. "Uncas," he continued, "you have heard that Magua wants this woman to be his wife. Do you have anything to say?" Uncas looked sadly at Cora. Finally he replied, "She does not want to go with him. Let her stay with me." "That is not possible," said Tamenund. "According to our customs, she is Magua's prisoner, and he has the right to keep her." "But she does not love him," cried Uncas. "That may be true, but we cannot change our customs," Tamenund replied. He turned to Cora and asked, "What do you say, woman? A great chief wants you for a wife. Will you go with him willingly?" "No, I would prefer to die 1,000 times," answered Cora. She looked at Uncas. "Magua," said Tamenund, "she does not want to go with you." "I want to take with me what I brought with me," answered Magua. "Then take her," Tamenund said. "It is your right." "Wait," said Duncan. "Listen, Magua. Take gold instead. You will be a rich man." "I do not want the paleface's gold. I wanted vengeance, and now I have it," Magua said. "Her father whipped me, but now I have his daughter and he will never see her again. The Delaware have their laws and we must respect them, but I promise that I will follow you, Magua," Uncas shouted. "The forest is open," Magua answered. "Come and get me." Then he took his men and Cora into the forest and away from the Delaware village. Chapter 11. The Death of Uncas and Cora. Uncas was furious. "Warriors of the Delaware tribe," he shouted, "who will help me to rescue this woman?" Many young men showed their support for Uncas. They followed him as he went back into the main building of the village to plan the rescue. After an hour, Uncas and the other men came out. Uncas walked around a nearby tree chanting a war song. At the end of this ritual, he hit the tree with his tomahawk and gave a great war cry. Immediately, 100 young warriors ran forward and did the same thing. When they had finished, only the roots of the tree remained. Uncas divided the warriors into 3 groups. He led one group, Chingachgook led the second, Hawkeye led the third. They followed Magua's trail back toward the Huron village. On the way, they met David Gamut. "Be careful," he told them. "The Hurons are waiting for you. They are hiding in the forest outside the village." "Thank you, friend," said Hawkeye. "We are ready for them." The fighting began soon afterwards. The Delaware warriors fought bravely and forced the Hurons back toward their village. Suddenly, Uncas saw Magua pulling Cora up a mountain path behind the village. "Magua, you will not escape!" Uncas shouted. Uncas and Hawkeye left the battle and ran up the mountain path toward Magua and Cora. When Cora saw this, she stepped to the side of the path and shouted at Magua, "I will go no further. Kill me if you wish to." As Magua raised his knife, Uncas jumped down onto the path from above. But it was too late. One of Magua's men stepped forward and stabbed his knife into Cora's chest. "Uncas!" cried Cora. Uncas ran to Cora and managed to wound her killer, but he could not save her. "No! No!" cried Uncas. As Uncas held Cora's body, Magua stabbed his knife 3 times into the Mohican's back. Uncas's body fell to the ground. Then Magua saw Hawkeye coming after him. With a terrible cry, he ran up the mountain. Hawkeye reached the scene as Magua prepared to jump over a crevice in the mountainside. The Huron turned and shouted, "You will never catch me!" Magua jumped, but instead of arriving safely on the other side, he missed the edge and only managed to grab a tree branch that hung over the crevice. Hawkeye raised his rifle and pointed it at Magua. But then Magua lost his grip and fell to his death. The fighting was finished, and the Delaware women came out of the village to cry over Cora's body. They spoke to her spirit and told her to be happy that she and Uncas had died so bravely. Colonel Monroe and Alice stood silently beside Hawkeye. Cora's body was placed into a grave. Then Hawkeye spoke to the Delaware women in their own language. "Gentle women of the Delaware, this grieving father and sister thank you for the care you have taken of their loved one and for your kind words about her." All this time, Chingachgook sat beside the body of his son. He did not say a word. One by one, Delaware warriors came and spoke to the body of Uncas. "Why have you left us?" they cried. "Who that saw you in battle could believe that you could die?" The warriors covered Uncas in animal skins and put his body in another grave next to Cora's. Eventually, Chingachgook spoke. "Why do the warriors mourn?" he said in a strong voice. "Uncas filled his time on earth with honor. He was good, he was honorable, he was brave. We must not cry. As for me, my people are gone from the lake and the hills. I am alone." "No, not alone," said Hawkeye. "Uncas was your son, but he was like a brother to me. He has left us, great chief, but you are not alone." Hawkeye and Chingachgook embraced, and the tears of both men fell onto Uncas's grave. Tamenund was watching from above. Eventually he spoke. "It is enough," he said. My day has been too long. I have lived to see the pale-faces become masters of the earth. In the morning of my life's day, I saw the Mohicans happy and strong. Now, before it's night, I have seen the last of the Mohicans.